Now, there are certainly times when I don't think before I purchase. eBay's an example of that yesterday. I went in, I saw an Oilers jersey. It's the old blue and copper, dark blue. And I love that color. And it had the striping the way I like it. Pre-lockout. So I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and just bid on that. Now I want somebody to snipe it because it's an extra large. And I knew that at the time. I was like, well, it's an extra large, I'll swim in it, but whatever. It's the jersey I want. Then I looked through their other listings and I was like, oh, they have it in small. I will fit into small. Shit. So I've bid $19 and $10 shipping and handling, so it's $29. It's not a big deal. But I'd like the small. So I've got that one on my watch list. I've also got an offer in on the old St. Louis Blues third jersey, which has, St. Louis in the blue note and the red and yellow stripes coming down diagonally. It's not pretty, but I like the horns on the sleeves, and it's a good price. So as long as that doesn't get bid up too much. But I've got a couple days out with that one, and I've noticed that sniping happens a lot. Got a Montreal jersey last night for $5. Somebody tried to snipe it off me, and they failed. So that's already in the mail on its way to me. So that's 3 jerseys I have coming. But when you buy something without paying attention to what you're buying, sometimes you're Arizona. Radim Vrbata in Vancouver last year was terrible. Truly terrible. And what Arizona did was they looked and saw a player who was useful for them the last time they had him. And he may have a bounce back. He may. Could happen. But I'm really glad Vancouver didn't sign him. For $1 million plus bonuses, it's a good signing for Arizona. They got the cap room. I mean, geez. So, I mean, if he plays well and he ends up earning $3.5 million, that means he's earned it. It means he got the goals, assists, whatever else they're using to measure, so that he gets that total. Vermette signing with the Ducks is good news for the Ducks and for their fans. Vermette is a faceoff specialist. Now between Vermette and Kessler and Getzlaf, like, are the Ducks going to let anybody win a faceoff this year? I mean, even just a little. Vermette can play on the wing occasionally, and I think that's what will happen. I think he'll take defensive zone faceoffs for the Ducks. He'll probably penalty kill for the Ducks, and I think they'll shelter him other than that. Vermette's top 6 skill is pretty well gone, but he has enough left in the tank that if he is monitored and if he is put in the right situations, he could really flourish. And he could be a gold mine for Anaheim. Anaheim was a team that when I was doing my preseason predictions, I said that their forward depth was suspect. This helps a lot. So it'll be interesting to see how things work out. Like, all right, so according to the forward depth in here, I mean, where's the most likely place to plug them in? See, because they've got Getzlaf, Kessler, Raquel, and Thompson down the middle. Now you can squeeze Vermette into the 4th line center and give him 3rd line wing time, because Garbett and Wagner are 3rd line wingers according to this magazine, and that's not going to get you anywhere. So it makes a lot of sense. If you have Raquel on the same line as Vermette, you can switch out who's taking the face-off, depending on which zone you're in. And I think it's a really good signing for Arizona, or for Anaheim. As for Arizona, I guess it shoves Ryan White out of the lineup by adding Vrbata. I can't see him getting any higher than 4th line, really. I mean, you've got Duclair, you've got Doan, you've got McGinn on the right side. On the left, you've got Domi, Dvorak, and Reeder. I don't see where Vrbata gets more than 4th line time. So, good depth pick for Arizona, and then if somebody gets hurt up front, he can move up the lineup, but if he moves up the lineup, he'll be less effective. And I don't even know if I like Vrbata as a 4th line forward. He's let's just say when he doesn't feel like playing, it shows. And it was either that he didn't feel like it or his talent level isn't what it was, and he hit that wall. Every veteran hits that wall. Marlowe was close to it in San Jose. You hit that wall, and then past that wall, you're done. It's over. And it's sad to watch guys do it, but it happens. I guess we'll see what happens there. The other thing I wanted to touch on, I do keep track of the Canucks Form. And the Canucks Forum is made up of fans who want tank, tank, tank. We want that number 1 draft pick. And then other fans who say, well, we're still a playoff team. Still. Okay, you've missed the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years. How are you still a playoff team? And then they talk about how if the Sedins and Eriksson click, then they're a top 5 line in the entire NHL. See, this is why fans from other teams laugh at us. Because we think the Sedins and Eriksson right now is a line that's top 5 in the NHL. They're not. 5 years ago they would have been. They're not now. In terms of lines in the NHL, they're one of the weakest first lines in the NHL. Both Sedins scored a lot less points than they did 5 years ago. And, and then all the excuses come out. Well, injuries, blah, blah, blah. Like injuries aren't going to happen this year. The problem with the Sedins is as you get older, the injuries become more frequent, and it becomes harder and harder to come back after an injury. And that's where the Sedins are at. And with the amount of playing time that they get, because they're first liners, they're going to have a harder and harder time coming back. So there's the problem. If the Sedin, let's say Henrik gets hurt a month into the season. Well, now who's your number 1 center? Horvat? Brandon Sutter? And we're a playoff team. These guys are a playoff team. I cheer for these guys. I'm not against these guys. I'm not an anti-fan. I'm just trying to figure this out. And your power play point man is who? Somebody even pointed out in that thread, well, if Ulevi plays up to his potential, he could bump Edler down. Okay, so what does that say about Edler then as your number 1 power play point man? Not much. You don't see Ottawa fans saying, oh, if Thomas Chabot makes the team, then, he might knock Erik Karlsson out of that spot. Or Phoenix fans saying, Arizona fans saying, well, if Jacob Chikrin comes up, who knows? If he's good with his hands, he might bump Erik Larson out of his spot, Ekman Larson out of his spot there. No. It just shows that the defense in Vancouver is weak. They're big. And then I see things like, well, if Triamkin takes a step forward, look, I love Triamkin. I love his game. But he's a big, burly defenseman who's never going to score more than about 15 points in a season. His step forward is a step into somebody's jaw and knocking them into, into Days Street, like just knocking people out. That's the step forward that Triamkin's going to take. And Goodbranson, and everybody's like, oh, well, Goodbranson's replacing Ham Hughes. Oh, good. You're replacing a defenseman who can pass the puck for a defenseman who hasn't shown any offensive acumen in the NHL whatsoever. A defenseman who might score 15 points this year in your top five for a guy who a couple years ago was scoring you 30. But that's not a step back. I get that Goodbranson hits a lot. I get it. I understand this. I don't understand this whole, well, we've upgraded. No, we've got assets that are better than what we lost, but the entire core of the team has downgraded. That's the problem. It is so hard. It's like the Rangers after 94. Okay, 94 happens, the Rangers hold the cup up, everything's great. 95, they bring in more Oilers. 96, they tried other Oilers. It's like, okay, guys, they're all over the hill now. You're going to have to look for a different team to find players from than the Oilers. And they tried it for years. They tried it right up until Gretzky. They got Gretzky, and then it was all, oh, we got Gretzky, yay. And it's like, guys, they're all over the hill. Stop it. And in Vancouver, fans seem to think, oh, good, we've got all these guys. The problem is they're over the hill. And then when they talk about, oh, these young guys can step up. Emerson Edom, Zero offensive acumen in the NHL. Has already bounced around between, this is his third team now. Sven Berchi is not a top 6 forward. If he's on the third line, I'm happy. On the second line, you don't have a hope. You just don't. Brendan Gaunce? Brendan Gaunce has zero offense at the NHL level. Brendan Gaunce is a fourth liner, and he's a grinder. That's it. And I love Gaunce. Virtanen, they're going to ruin him. If they push Virtanen before he's ready, they're going to ruin him. Gilbert Brulé style. He is a big hitting winger. And if you stick him in that third/fourth line spot, you're screwing him over, because he can end up being stuck in that spot and never get above it. It happens. Don't scratch me. Just get down. So where Vancouver's at right now is this. A lot of their fan base think, hey, we're a bubble team. We're right on the verge of making the playoffs. We got solid goaltending. And then the thread that's in here is the media obviously doesn't pay attention to our team if they believe we'll be a bottom feeder. Here's the problem. Last season, they were a bottom feeder. They were third from last in the NHL. That's why we were in line for the number 3 draft pick, but we couldn't even get that right. We still finished with the number 5 draft pick. So instead of getting Puljujarvi, which would have had me doing a live reaction happy dance, we got Juolevi, which made me go, no Tkachuk? And fans who bitch and say, we don't need Tkachuk. Juolevi, we needed a defenseman, so Juolevi. Okay. When Tkachuk is a monster power forward in Calgary, putting up 30 goals a year and putting up 120 penalty minutes and being exactly the guy that the Canucks needed on the wing, nobody can go back to me later and bitch about Juolevi or that we didn't draft Tkachuk. I don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. Because yes, they needed a top 4 defenseman. Fine. They're not making the playoffs this year anyways. They could have drafted Tkachuk this year, and next year, believe me, even with Tkachuk, this team wasn't going anywhere. So then you draft Liljegren next year, and that's your top defenseman. Now, they could still draft Liljegren next year. Certainly. And if they get the number 1 draft pick, they probably will, and they'll pass on Nolan Patrick. That first line forward they need. Because it's a pattern right now. Well, let's take a look at, let's look at this thread here. We have quite a few players that are at the age where they can really take a leap this season. Horvat is not going to take a leap beyond about 55 points. Berchi, no. Goodbranson, what leap? Is there an offensive leap that I haven't seen in his, I think he's at 5 years in? Granlund, are you fucking kidding me? Rodin, if he makes the NHL, eat him. No, he doesn't have the hands. He has feet, no hands. If we want feet, no hands, we could have got Mason Raymond back. Markstrom is a middle-of-the-road goaltender. I'd be very surprised, shocked, if he turns into a 920, 925 goals against, or 925 save percentage goalie. A few rookies who can break out from where they left off last year. Triamkin. No, he's a physical defenseman. He's a 5'6" guy. Hutton. I have a feeling with Ben Hutton, what we saw last year is his ceiling. I think he's a 30 to 30-point defenseman. I think he's a good defenseman, and I think he'll be overrated because Vancouver doesn't have very many of those. Virtanen, I've already talked about Virtanen, and then Juolevi, where he says he could potentially fill Edler's spot. This is where he loses me. First line, solid, probably in the top 5 of the NHL. No. Second line, left wing, unknown, but Sutter and Hansen will be able to do enough to make it a solid 2-way line. Yes, Brandon Sutter, who played 20 games last year and is a 20-goal scorer at most and is best suited for third line time. Yeah. And then he puts in your left winger unknown. Well, wait, but how can you say, whatever. Third line, very youthful, energetic force that will probably take over second line duties just a few games in. Berchi, Horvat, and either Virtanen or Rodin on the right side. Well, then why do you have Sutter and Hansen in the second line spot? Like, if it's only going to be a few games in, then go ahead and throw them on the second line. Fourth line, there's so many options. There are some young guys like Granlund, Gaunce, and Edom that can make the fourth line and play like a good third line. I go out on a limb and say this could potentially be the best fourth line in the NHL. Then there's Burrows, Dorsett, and Grenier. Where do they fit? I don't know where to start with what's wrong with this. I don't know. I don't know whether to start with best fourth line in the NHL or just, there's a reason I'm wearing a Leafs t-shirt for this video. There's a reason. This is why fans of other teams laugh at fans of the Canucks. None of those guys are the kind of fourth liners that we would see in Pittsburgh, on the Islanders, or even in Toronto this year. Granlund is not suitable for fourth line duty. He's not good enough to be top six, and he's not great enough for bottom six. Marcus Granlund will end up in the American Hockey League within the next couple seasons. Edom? You going to put Edom on the fourth line? Edom is not a fourth liner either. The guy couldn't lick a stamp. He's, and he's fast. I get it. These guys are fast and they can puck handle. And if none of them can score, what does it matter? This is where the puck possession guys kind of, make me wonder. Puck possession's fine, but if you have hands of stone, who cares if you have the puck? Because I've played with guys like that. I've played with guys who they might be ball hogs, and you're like, why doesn't he pass it? He can't shoot. Do you see this shit? Pass it! Like you're just yelling at him to pass it, because get out of there. So every time there's a turnover for the other team and you see who's got it, you're like, yeah, oh, shit, it's him again. He can't shoot. Has anybody told him he can't shoot? Can you tell him? You want me to? I'll go out there. The game's going on. We'll get a penalty, but I'll go out there and tell him. That would be amazing if somebody actually came off the bench during a game. Too many men on the ice penalty, doesn't even pay attention to the fact the whistle's blown, and just skates over to the guy and goes, can you stop handling the puck? Because I know the advanced stats nerds up there are writing down your name and talking about how amazing you are. You can't shoot. So we don't care. And first defense is solid. Edler and Tanev always a solid defensive force. Second, Hutton's a great puck-moving defenseman that could really pile on the points, especially since he now has a towering defensive force playing alongside him and Goodbranson. I can see this as our first D because this pairing will really help the Swedish trio in the O-zone. Have you seen Goodbranson's numbers? Have you seen him? There's a reason Florida traded him, and everybody always says, oh, well, it's because, salary cap, blah, 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 blah. No. Florida's GM looks at the team and goes, we aren't mobile enough, and our puck possession numbers are shit. That's why they made the moves they did. Florida revamped their defense completely after having the best season they've had in 10 years. That's why. So Goodbranson moves out because he doesn't fit the new model. The new model is puck possession, offense, and being able to generate chances from the point. Goodbranson does none of that. And from what I've read, his skating is suspect. And third D, if Triamkin plays like he did last year or better, he'll make this team very hard to score on. Larson and Zabiza will battle out for the number 6 slot. I see Larson beating out Zabiza. I think Zabiza goes on waivers. Nobody takes him, and he ends up in the American Hockey League. It's not Zabiza's fault. He's paid too much money, and he's prone to mistakes. Lots and lots of mistakes. I'm fine with being optimistic about the Canucks, but I'm realistic. I see them not as a bottom feeder. I just look at them and I say they don't have a roster that compares with the rest of the West. You can look at their roster in a vacuum and say this team should win. But then you match it up against the Oilers, the Flames, the Ducks, the Kings, the Sharks, even the Coyotes. And at what position do you look at and say, we've got them beat there? Coyotes. Do you have them beat in goal? Probably. Mike Smith isn't a great goaltender. Do you have them beat on the blue line? Well, they have Ekman Larson. You don't have that. They have the young kid Murphy, who looks pretty damn good. So I give the edge to the Coyotes there. Up front, Are you kidding me? Arizona looks really dynamic up front. If Strome and Dvorak come in and play as well as I think they can, as well as I think they will, the Coyotes will have no problem scoring goals. It's just going to be their back end that's the problem. So no, I think they beat the Canucks up front because they can skate circles around them. But what do I know? I'm just some guy with a YouTube channel, and I'm clearly not an expert in this match because I don't see it as the media being. When I see fans saying the media is against us, I hear Trump. I hear it in Trump's voice. This isn't about the media. I would think that most people outside of Vancouver look at the Canucks right now. They look at their record last year. They look at their roster and they say this team isn't a playoff team. It's not some kind of a conspiracy. The funny part is when they say, well, we made the playoffs the year before. Yeah, and you missed the playoffs the year before that. It's Sens fans all over again. It's Ottawa all over again. So I just don't I don't get it. I don't. I think there's a perception that if you don't think your team's good enough for the playoffs, then you're not a real fan. There's a perception that if you look at your lineup realistically and you say, well, these guys aren't going to compete for a playoff spot, that's no way to talk. The season hasn't even started yet. Sure. I'll take my shitty bike. I'll go out on an Olympic track. I'll go up against one of these guys from Eastern Europe, one of these absolute genetic freaks who's got this bike that's worth $8 billion. And before the race, when people are yelling out, I suck, I go, hey, race hasn't started yet. I could win, you know. I could win. So, because the race hasn't started. And then when I get absolutely smoked, I come across the finish line at the end and go, I knew that was going to happen. Because that's what's going to happen. At the end of this season, Canucks miss the playoffs. There's going to be all kinds of people who right now are like, I believe in us, who are going to go, I knew it. I knew it. Benning should be fired. This sucks. I knew this was going to happen. Difference is, I have a channel so that later on, I get proven wrong. I go, yeah, I was proven wrong. But if I'm proven right, there's video proof that I said it before the season even started. I'm going to watch the Canucks this year to watch how certain players progress. But believe me, when I've got the NHL Center Ice package and I look at the schedule and I say, okay, these are the two games I'm covering tonight, it's not always going to be Canucks games I'm covering. There's going to be nights where I look and I go, you know what? This is a key matchup between two top teams. I have to cover this. If I cover Arizona, Vancouver, I look biased and it'd be right. It'd be true. So, you know, I have to be fair with this. Now, I can flip channels a little bit. You know, maybe one game's in an intermission. I can skip over and watch the Canucks game for a little while. But in terms of which game I'm giving most of my attention to, it won't be the Canucks game because it's not the game with the top teams. And I want to be able to deliver videos for you guys that are fair. The only trick is, does that get me views? It's not going to get me views. If it doesn't get me views, I can't do it. I can't. The one thing I noticed, yesterday. I mean, I looked at Steve Dangle's his channel, and I hadn't really bothered. And I looked all the way down all of his video lists, and yeah, he started with the same kind of setup I've got here. And the difference is he covers the Leafs. I intend to cover everybody. If this was just going to be a Canucks channel, I would have called the Canuck guy. Canuck Central. You know, Canucks in the hizzy, whatever. God? But, okay, gotta put the hammer down. But, you know, that's the difference. So whether that gives me, you know, the ability to grow to a level he's at or not, if it holds me back, honestly, I want to be inclusive. I want everybody everywhere to feel like I will cover their team. I'm only on a Canucks deal right now because I can't believe what I'm reading. And people are agreeing with this guy. Oh, yeah, we're going to have a great team. Oh, yeah. Eriksson with the Sedins, lights out. That's going to be amazing. Eriksson has only scored 30 goals once in the last, I think, 4 or 5 years. He's not scoring 30 goals this year. Oh, he's got the Sedins feeding him the puck. Okay, well, they're going to be gassed at 30 seconds because the Sedins can't skate like they used to. The Sedins are 55, 60 point guys now. They're not top flight players anymore. And, we've got the World Cup of Hockey coming up. I'm hoping they don't get hurt because Henrik especially is fragile these days. And it could happen. And if Henrik gets hurt, welcome to the Canucks, Nolan Patrick. You can just pack, bring your bags over here. And the season hasn't started yet, but it's fine because we're drafting first. In reality, we'd lose the lottery and end up drafting fourth, but that's just the way it goes. Well, thanks for watching.